Welcome to Byte-Sized Tech, where we blend casual conversations with insightful discussions on the latest in technology and gadgets. You know, it's funny, we often overlook the tech that's right under our noses, literally keeping us warm on chilly days like this.
Yeah,
So today,
that is.
let's deep dive into the fascinating world of space heaters. I've got our tech expert here, ready to unpack the science and safety behind these unsung heroes of winter.
I'm happy to be here. It's amazing how much ingenuity goes into something we often take for granted.
I know, right? I was actually surprised to learn how much tech is packed into these seemingly simple devices.
Right.
I always assumed it was just, well, a heating element and a fan.
That's a common misconception. While the core concept is straightforward, you've got nichrome wires that heat up when electricity flows through them, and a fan to distribute the warmth. There's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah.
For instance, did you know that nichrome wire is specifically chosen because it has high electrical resistance, which helps it generate heat efficiently?
No, I didn't. It's like a tiny, controlled electrical fire in there.
See, this is what I love about these deep dives, always learning something new. But let's talk safety, because I'm guessing there's more to it than just don't touch the hot parts.
Absolutely. One of the most ingenious safety features is the tip-over switch. Imagine this. Back in the day, before this was standard, a space heater gets knocked over, and suddenly you've got a potential fire hazard.
Oh, yeah.
So someone comes up with this simple but brilliant solution, a little foot at the bottom of the heater.
Okay.
If the heater tips over, the foot pops up, breaks the circuit, and cuts the power. Problem solved.
It's like a little bodyguard for your house, always on the lookout for tumbles.
Yeah.
I'm picturing a tiny superhero in a cape leaping to action. But what about when things get a little too toasty inside the heater itself? Is there a fail-safe for that?
There is. That's where the high temperature limit switch comes in. It's like the emergency brake for overheating.
This little switch has a bimetallic disc.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't electricians, can you break down what that means in practical terms? Why is that a concern?
Imagine your house is wiring like a network of roads,
Okay.
and the electricity is like traffic flowing through those roads. A 15-amp circuit is like a road with a certain capacity.
Right.
If you try to cram too many cars onto that road by plugging in too many high-powered devices, you're going to cause a traffic jam.
Yeah.
Or in this case, an overloaded circuit. That can lead to overheating, blown fuses, or even fire hazards.
So it's like trying to fit an elephant through a doggy door. Things are going to get squeezed and possibly sparky.
Exact.
That's a great analogy. Thanks for breaking it down.
No problem. And it's especially important to consider this when dealing with older homes that may have outdated wiring or outlets that have become loose or worn over time.
Exactly.
Those hot outlets, that's a clear sign that something's not right. It's like the electrical equivalent of a fever, a warning sign that you need to call in a professional.
Makes sense. So on that note, what about extension cords and power strips? Are those ever a good idea with space heaters?
That's a hard no. Extension cords and power strips are simply not designed to handle the kind of sustained high current that a space heater demands. Even if the packaging says it can handle the wattage, the quality can vary wildly, and you really don't want to risk it when it comes to fire hazards.
Yeah, it's like trying to pump a fire hose worth of water through a garden hose. Something's got to give, and it's probably not going to be pretty. So the takeaway here is plug directly into a wall outlet, and if you have any doubts about your wiring, get it checked by an electrician. Better safe than sorry, right?
Couldn't agree more. And while we're on the topic of safety, let's talk about placement. Where you put your space heater can make a big difference in terms of both effectiveness and safety.
Okay, so imagine I've got my space heater fresh out of the box, ready to crank up the heat. Where should I put this thing?
First and foremost, you want to make sure it's on a flat, stable surface, away from anything flammable. Think curtains, furniture, papers, anything that could catch fire if it gets too hot.
So basically, treat it like a mini bonfire, give it plenty of space, and keep the marshmallows away.
Exactly. A good rule of thumb is to keep a 3-foot perimeter around the heater clear of any obstacles. And make sure the vents are clear. You don't want to block the airflow and cause it to overheat.
Makes sense. You don't want to suffocate the poor thing. But what about using space heaters around kids and pets? Any extra precautions there?
Absolutely. Little ones and furry friends don't always understand the dangers of hot surfaces. So if you've got kids or pets, it's crucial to keep those space heaters out of reach. You might also consider models with cool touch exteriors or built-in safety features like automatic shutoff if the heater gets knocked over.
Yeah, I can just imagine a curious cat getting a little too cozy with the warmth.
Right. And never, ever leave a space heater unattended. Turn it off when you leave the room, even for a short time. It's just not worth the risk.
Solid advice. It's like the old saying, better safe than sorry. Speaking of different types of space heaters, are some inherently safer than others?
That's a great question. There are actually several types of space heaters, each with its own pros and cons in terms of safety and efficiency. For example, you've got radiant heaters, which use infrared radiation to directly heat objects and people in their line of sight. They're great for spot heating, like warming up your desk while you work, but you need to be extra careful about keeping flammable materials away from that direct heat.
It's like having a personal sunbeam. Effective, but you got to be careful where you point it. What are the other types?
Then you have convection heaters, which warm up the air and circulate it throughout the room. They're generally considered safer and more energy efficient than radiant heaters, but they might take a bit longer to warm up a space.
So more of a gentle, all-encompassing warmth.
Exactly. And then you've got fan-forced heaters, which use a fan to distribute the heat more quickly. They're great for larger rooms, but they can be a bit noisier.
So like a turbocharged convection heater.
Precisely. When choosing a space heater, it really comes down to your individual needs and the space you'll be using it in.
Lots of factors to consider. Safety, efficiency, noise level. It's more than just picking something that looks cute.
You got it. It's about finding the right tool for the job. And speaking of tools, let's talk about maintenance. Just like any appliance, a little TLC can go a long way in keeping your space heater running safely and efficiently.
Honestly, I've never really thought about giving my space heater a spa day.
It may be not a spa day, but regular cleaning is essential. Dust and debris can accumulate on the exterior and in the vents, reducing airflow and creating a potential fire hazard. So make it a habit to dust and vacuum your space heater regularly, especially before you pull it out for the season.
So a little dusting and vacuuming can prevent big problems down the road. What about other maintenance tips?
Always inspect the cord and plug for any signs of damage or wear and tear. If you notice any frayed wires, loose connections, or discoloration, it's time to replace the cord or the entire heater.
That makes sense. A faulty cord is like a ticking time bomb, right?
Yeah,
Better to replace it than risk a fire.
exactly. And if you ever notice any unusual smells or sounds coming from the heater, like a burning odor or a rattling noise, unplug it immediately and have it checked by a qualified electrician. Don't take any chances when it comes to electrical safety.
Safety first. It's always better to be overly cautious than risk a potential hazard. Speaking of hazards, I've heard some rumors about space heaters and electromagnetic fields, or EMFs. Is there any truth to that?
That's an interesting question. While space heaters do generate EMFs, just like any electrical appliance, the levels are typically very low and considered safe by most experts.
So, no need to worry about turning into a supervillain from space heater radiation.
Not quite. But if you're still concerned about EMFs, you can always choose a low EMF model or simply maintain a bit of distance from the heater while it's running.
Distance is always good advice, especially when dealing with heat. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the basic workings of space heaters to safety features, placement, types, maintenance, and even those EMF concerns. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
I think the biggest takeaway is that space heaters are fantastic tools for adding warmth and comfort to our lives, but they're not something to be careless with. Like any technology, understanding the risks and following basic safety guidelines is crucial.
Couldn't agree more. It's all about being informed and making responsible choices. Now, before we sign off, I wanted to touch on something we haven't discussed yet: the environmental impact of space heaters. Are there ways to stay warm without adding to our carbon footprint?
That's a very timely question, and definitely something to think about. Traditional space heaters, especially those that run on electricity, can be energy intensive, but there are definitely some more eco-friendly options out there.
Oh, do tell. I'm all ears when it comes to saving the planet and my energy bill at the same time.
Well, for starters, you might consider infrared heaters. They use radiant heat to warm objects directly, rather than heating the entire air mass of a room, which can be more energy efficient.
So it's like having a targeted heat beam for your body instead of trying to warm up the whole universe.
Exactly. And because they don't rely on convection, they don't stir up as much dust and allergens, which can be a bonus for people with allergies or asthma.
That's a win-win. What other eco-friendly options are out there?
Another option is oil-filled radiators. They take a little longer to heat up, but they retain heat very well and release it slowly and evenly even after they've been switched off.
So it's like having a warm hug that lingers even after the heater is off.
Exactly. And of course, the most eco-friendly option is to reduce your reliance on space heaters in the first place.
Right, back to the basics.
Simple things like ceiling drafts, adding insulation, using weather stripping, and layering up with warm clothing can make a big difference in keeping your home warm naturally.
Those are great tips. It's all about being mindful and efficient with our energy use. Well, I think we've covered just about everything there is to know about space heaters. From the inner workings to safety tips, placement strategies, types, maintenance, environmental impact, and even those EMF myths, we've really gone deep.
We have. It's amazing how much there is to learn about something we often take for granted.
Absolutely, space heaters,
Yeah.
not just simple warmers. They're little safety champs with some electrical quirks to watch out for. But with a little knowledge and care, they can keep us cozy and safe all winter long.
Well said.
Thanks for tuning in to Byte-Sized Tech. If you enjoyed the episode, like, comment, share, and subscribe for more fun tech discussions.